guys, and welcome back to the channel. And for any of you joining me who aren't usual viewers, I mainly do content on TV and movies, but something I also have a massive interest in is true crime and true crime situations or true stories that influence movies or series. So today I'm here to do a bit of both. As I promised in a recent video about the new Netflix documentary American Nightmare, the story behind this is one that has always completely flabbergasted me. I'm going to talk to you about it today, tell you the story. We're just going to have a little bit, what do you think? A little bit of chat. I'll tell you what I'm thinking as I'm going through. This is not going to be full of court transcripts and all this factual stuff. This is going to be a chat about the TV show, about bits that I know that weren't really discussed on the TV show, and really finding out what you guys think about the story behind American Nightmare. So obviously massive spoilers ahead. Don't watch if you want to see the documentary. Let's get into it. So let's start with the phone call that brought everything to light. This was made on Monday the 23rd of March 2015 by an Quinn. This is an excerpt from that telephone call.
Emergency.
Yeah, my girlfriend got kidnapped last night.
What do you mean she got kidnapped?
Someone came into our house, tied us up, took her.
And you didn't call last night when this occurred?
I was tied up.
What time did you get untied, sir?
This morning, they gave me sedative.
What's your girlfriend's name?
Denise.
What is your name?
Aaron.
Okay, I've got the call in for service. We're getting officers on the way.
Okay, first of all, let's talk about that call. It's very strange, it's very weird. Obviously, Aaron is questioned about why he has waited the timescale that he has. Why has he not called immediately? What's going on? Why does he sound quite so laid back about the whole thing? Why does he not sound in a complete panic? Someone has broken into his home and has kidnapped his girlfriend. So let's have a little bit of context. Let's give you a little bit of background. So let's go back to when Denise and Aaron got together. So Denise and Aaron both work as physical therapists. Denise had recently moved to Vallejo to have a job in the physical therapy department of a hospital, and it just so happened that Aaron worked in that hospital. But this is where they met. They got along very well. Aaron was actually in a relationship at this stage with a lady called Andrea Roberts, who also worked in the same place, but their relationship was a little bit on rocky ground. Aaron had just found out that Andrea had been cheating on him for 2 years. They were engaged to be married. He was planning a future with this woman. He was in love with her. So it was a massive wake-up call for him. He wasn't sure what he was going to do. He tried to take a step back from the relationship and work out where he was going to go with it. The couple split up, and because he had met Denise at work and they had a bit of a rapport, he was attracted to her, they got along very well. He wasn't entirely sure that he was over Andrea, but he decided to ask Denise out anyway. He was very upfront with her. He told her all about the engagement, what had happened, that he was still a bit raw from everything, that he wasn't 100% sure that he was completely over her, but in the light of this, she was made aware of it and they decided to make a go of things. So Aaron and Denise get on famously. Everything's going very well, but a bit down the line, Denise starts to feel things are a little bit different. Aaron seems very distanced from her. He's quite quiet. He always sort of seems to be somewhere else, as in his mind is always thinking about something else. And she feels that something's not quite right. Now, with what she knows about his engagement to Andrea, the fact they still work in the same building, the fact that he did admit that, potentially he was having difficulty getting over her, she had her suspicions. So Denise did that thing which no couple should ever do. She went through Aaron's phone when he wasn't in the room, and unfortunately her suspicions were confirmed. She found out that Aaron had actually been messaging Andrea, telling her he missed her, he wanted to get back with her, he wanted to get back together and make a go of things, that he forgave her for her cheating on him. And obviously Denise, this is her boyfriend, she's absolutely devastated. She felt, what am I to you? You want back with your ex, why are you with me? And obviously it caused quite the bit of a ruckus. She confronted him. He told her he didn't know where his head was. He told her that he did feel still not quite over Andrea, and they decided to cool things off. Denise said she needed some time to think. She didn't know what she wanted to do. And in this time, Aaron actually visited a therapist to talk things over. And in these therapist meetings, he decided that he was done with Andrea, that he didn't want to be in the relationship, and he broke things off with her entirely. Now, this obviously necessarily doesn't mean Denise is going to take him back. So Aaron contacts Andrea and tells her he's gathered the last few bits of her stuff and asks her to come get them. So meanwhile, it's the day before that 911 call. It's Sunday 22nd, 2015. And Denise is actually going over to Aaron's house. They're going to talk things over. They're going to see if perhaps they can get back on track, if there's nowhere that the relationship can go. She goes over to Aaron's house. She packs an overnight bag. I questioned that. I thought, why would you pack an overnight bag to go over to see someone that has wanted to get back with her ex? I'm thinking Denise is obviously a very nice lady, bit of a soft touch. So she picks up a pizza also on the way. This Aaron guy's obviously got something going for him, and I'm not quite sure what it is. So she arrives, pizza in hand, overnight bag, and they spend the night talking. And in the process of this talking, they get along very well. Aaron's very open with Denise about his feelings, he was very apologetic about what he'd done. He talked about, they'd been together for such a long time, him and Andrea. He just had a lot of difficulty. And they get back on track pretty much. They have a really nice evening, and Denise decides to stay the night. So we're going into the Monday morning now of the 23rd, the day of that telephone call. Denise and Aaron go to bed. I'm not going to talk about what happened next because we don't know, but we can imagine. So 3 a.m. and they're startled awake to noise, which terrifyingly is in their bedroom. They see flashing lights like strobe lights. They can't make anything out. They see red dots around the room like laser pointers, and they hear a robotic, almost disguised, very calm, very slow voice telling them this is a robbery. The voice tells them to wake up. They then are told to get out of bed. They are asked to lie on their fronts on the bed. Denise is instructed to zip tie Aaron, his hands and his feet, and then she is instructed to go into the wardrobe. So she's put in the wardrobe, she's zip tied, she's got these goggles on, she can't see anything. Aaron is actually put into the same wardrobe with her, and then they both, by these intruders, have headphones put on, noise cancelling headphones, so all they can hear is what's being played through these headphones. Now this starts with quite calm, soothing music, but obviously it's all they can hear. And then recorded messages start to be played through these headphones to Denise and Aaron. I've written down the messages because God knows my memory is shot. Stay calm, we are not here to hurt you. This is not your fault. We are here purely for financial reasons. This will be over soon. Now that's repeated several times to them. Next, they're told that a medical professional is actually going to attend the house. They are going to have their vitals taken. They are going to be given a sedative to take orally, and if they refuse to take the sedative, then they shall be forced to take it intravenously. If they're on any medication at all, this could impact with this sedative. So they're strongly advised to follow instruction and to take it orally as requested. The next recorded message said that someone would be coming to take personal details from them, so their social security details, their date of birth, their bank details, anything really financial you would need to fleece someone, to be quite honest. They could hear whispering. They thought that there may possibly be 3 to 4 people there. Then they mentioned Aaron's name. They told him that it was a well-researched, premeditated attack. He was the target, and they knew the details and the names and addresses of all of his family, so he needed to comply. They were just there for financial reasons, and they would not hurt them if they fully follow all the instructions that they're given. So Denise was then taken from the wardrobe and into another bedroom. Both parties were told, if you don't give us this financial information that we're requesting from you, your partner is going to either be cut in the face or shot. Both people gave full information, everything that was requested to these people, and thought, I can hold out, they're going to go, they've got the information. All I care about is my life. I don't care if they go, if they empty my bank accounts, it's not an issue. All they cared about was each other and obviously getting out of the situation alive. Then they were left alone, but very shortly after, one of the intruders came back in to Aaron, and he sounded, for the first time, there was a description of emotion in his voice. He sounded quite concerned, and he hurriedly asked Aaron, do Denise and Andrea, now Andrea is Aaron's ex that he's recently split up with, do they look alike? They did. They looked quite similar. They both had the same length, long blonde hair, and it became clear to Aaron very quickly that the target of this attack had been himself and Andrea. They expected Andrea to be there, not Denise. Denise wasn't at all involved in this. Now, I don't know why this is. Is it possibly because Andrea was more financially wealthy than Denise? I'm not sure why Andrea was the target. It could be that they had fully researched her as they had Aaron. They knew everything about him, his family, all these addresses, And it could be they knew all that information about Andrea also. So I don't know if it was for extra financial gain or just because of the research, but they thought that Denise was Andrea. Aaron heard the intruders discussing between themselves what they were going to do, but they decided they were going to go ahead with the plan because they felt that there was enough financial gain to be had to just continue. So Aaron is left alone again. They took what they thought was Andrea, Denise, from the home, and Aaron had a recorded message play saying they had taken Andrea, obviously Denise, and they were going to hold her for 48 hours, and he had to follow all the instructions that he would be given. They said they were a group, an organisation from the dark web. They mainly collected financial debts, that they would follow them for years after this situation to make sure that they never divulged anything to anyone. And kind of as a way to back this up, they said that they did the same thing on a woman many years ago, that they followed her and what she was doing in life. And when she moved home to her new house, they had a pie of all things delivered to her new address so that she knew that they knew where she was, that they had still been watching and she wasn't going to be able to escape from them. So these guys very clearly meant business. So Aaron is all alone in the house. He'd actually been left on the couch. They told him they were going to leave him there. He'd obviously been given a sedative which was going to kick in, which would give plenty of time for these intruders, now kidnappers, to get away with Denise. They told him they were leaving Denise's phone there. They were going to leave scissors on the counter that he could free himself from the zip ties. Obviously, he would soon be asleep, so they would be able to get away. So the instructions he was given was that he was to text Denise's workplace in the morning and say that there had been a family emergency and she would not be into work for a week. And then he himself was to call his workplace and tell them that he was ill and he would not be coming into work that day. After he'd done this, he was going to be sent messages or emails from the kidnappers to give him instructions on what would happen next, but he would be expected to go to the bank that next day. They also told him that they had planted hidden cameras all over his home, that they would watch him and would be able to know exactly what he was doing, and obviously under no uncertain circumstances should he contact the police. If he did, Denise's life would be at risk. They also marked a boundary in the room with red tape and told Aaron he was not to leave the boundary of what they had marked, and obviously as he was being watched through these cameras they would know and Denise would be hurt. As they were leaving, they asked Aaron if he was okay. He told them that he was quite cold, and inexplicably they gave him a blanket. They told him a little bit of information which was a bit strange. They told him they didn't know how cold it was in the house because they had been wearing wetsuits. Now obviously this would have been to protect from any sort of like DNA evidence being left, any hairs, any fingerprints. They were probably wearing gloves. But they gave Aaron a blanket and left him, and his sedative kicked in. He did not wake until 7 a.m. when his alarm on his phone went off. That wakes him up every morning for work. So when he woke at 7, he did what he was asked. He was extremely drowsy, but he managed to text into Denise's supervisor as he was asked to, and he called in ill to work. He was so drowsy he actually fell back asleep on the couch. Obviously the sedative hadn't entirely worn off, and he only reawakened at 11:30 that morning. And it was at this stage that he got the scissors and he cut the zip ties and he managed to free himself. So I'll need to refer to my paper for the next bit. So when Aaron woke up again at 11:30, he checked his email and he did indeed have an email with instructions from the gang. It had been emailed from one of his addresses to another, one of the reasons they were asking for all their personal information and emails. So it looked like he was emailing himself from one email address to another one. There was no tie to the intruders. So Aaron was requested to contact the bank and to ask for a cash advance of $17,000. He was asked to split this between 2 cards. The reason for this is there is a $10,000 federal reporting limit. He was to tell them that he was buying a ski boat if he was asked what he was doing with the money. He did this, but his bank said that they could only advance him $3,250. So after receiving this news from the bank, Aaron is sitting there not really knowing what else to do. He's in a bit of a pickle, I think you could say. He noticed that one of the cameras that the intruders had left, he knew where it was because it was making a really silly noise. Now I thought they probably just said they had planted cameras, but it seems that they actually did. One of them was making a bit of a weird noise. He thought maybe it means it's not working. Maybe I can get up and make a phone call. So he decided to call his brother, who just so happened to be an FBI agent. He told his brother the entire story about what had happened. He said, what should I do? Should I call the police? What if they hurt Denise? And his brother told him, you must contact the police immediately. So at 1:50, he contacted the police. That's the call that you heard at the start, where the operator's obviously very confused. Why didn't you call us earlier? Now, there are certain protocols, there are certain things you have to say. A lot of people don't realise when you do work for dispatch, which I myself have done, you can't just sort of off the cuff speak. You can't sort of just use your intuition. You must follow specific scripts. There are certain scenarios that you must play through, that you must ask certain questions. Sometimes people fail 911 operators or case 999 operators. Why have you asked that? That's a bit stupid. Why didn't you ask that? Because they must follow specific protocols. But in this woman's head, very clearly she will have been thinking, you've done something, you've left it all this time. Obviously, you haven't been victim of a kidnapping, you don't sound panicked enough, something's not right here. But she won't have been able to say any of that on the telephone because as the dispatcher, it's just not allowed. So just to sort of reiterate that, I know she does say, and you waited all this time, but that's why she doesn't go any deeper into that. I just thought a little bit of inside knowledge, I just thought I'd put that through. So obviously the police are dispatched immediately to Aaron's address. They come in to question him. They are immediately suspicious of his supposedly calm and drowsy demeanour. They felt that he maybe looked hungover. There was a lot of beer cans in the recycling, which they sort of felt, have you had a party the night before? Aaron said that's just what they did. When he drank alcohol, they saved all the cans up and put them all at once into recycling. That's just normality. No, there was no party. There were also 2 glasses with whiskey on the kitchen counter and another glass on a coffee table. Now obviously that 3rd glass, they're like, was someone else present? But Aaron said no, that glass just had water in it, which the police were mighty suspicious of and made it quite clear very early on that they didn't believe him. Things were to go from bad to worse for Aaron. They removed him from the house and they searched the house, and they found a drop of blood in the bedroom, and they also found that the quilt was missing from the bed. I think in America you call it a comforter, we call it a quilt. So right, we know anybody that's into true crime knows that if there's a rug missing, if there's a quilt missing, if there's a blanket missing, something's happened to someone and someone's tried to hide it. There was also that drop of blood in the house, and the house smelled suspiciously clean, and everything looked just like it had been vacuumed, like it was just pristine. Remember, this is a house that a guy lives in on his own, so they immediately thought there's some, he's obviously been doing a cleanup. The reason he hasn't called for so long is because he's done something to Denise and he's been using all this time to cover his tracks. So this is where the police are looking at that moment. So Aaron was taken to the police station. He was asked to change out of his clothes and into jail clothes, obviously for forensics, and he had to have a blood test to check and see if there were any drugs in his system. So enter to the scene Detective Matthew Mustard, someone you will go on to probably loathe as much as I do. He's the first person in the police station to question Aaron. He wants to know the full story, but then he also wants to know the relationship history between Aaron and Denise. Also then he wants to know, because obviously Andrea is mentioned, he wants to know the full history in that relationship. He seems an awful lot more interested in these relationships than he is about what happened, and then he is about anything he saw or heard on the night, than what happened, than what they went through, any potential leads to where Denise could have been taken by these guys. He was particularly interested in Denise having found those texts that he sent to Andrea and how she may have been feeling, and the fact she would have been angry, she would have felt completely devastated, she would have felt lied to, cheated on. He was very interested in that and the potential argument that could have ensued following that, and the inference was very clearly that an argument happened, that things went too far, and that Aaron had done something to Denise and he was trying to cover it up.
I had then talked to my ex, and at that time, when I was still dating Denise.
Is there tension in the relationship? Is she mad?
She's upset.
Concerned?
Okay.
Is she cheating?
No, well, she felt that emotionally that was cheating in some sense.
I mean, did she discover something?
Well,
I mean, was she going through your phone and what the hell is
she
this?
went through my phone.
What'd she find?
Found text messages.
What did it say?
Saying I still care. I want to work things through with her.
the story that you're telling here, I ain't buying it all. You got to think about how this is all going to play out.
No, I'm making think about. I'm telling you what.
Listen to me. There ain't no frogmen came into your house. Nobody dressed in wetsuits or... It didn't happen. I don't think this happened intentionally. I think something happened, accidental, and you got to the point where you reacted the way that you did and you had to come up with this story.
He tried to sort of like get Aaron to admit something by saying maybe you did it on accident, maybe you'd been taking drugs, maybe she took too many drugs, maybe she had a reaction to drugs, maybe you were having rough sex, maybe you killed her. Why did I whisper when I said sex? Well, I don't know, I just whispered when I said sex, don't know why. Maybe something happened, maybe things got too far and now you don't know what to do. So this story that you've concocted is just too over the top. It's like a film script. It just doesn't ring true what you're telling us. Matt Mustard made it very clear right from the off that he did not believe Aaron. But Aaron stuck to his story despite the detective saying, look, these messages on your phone, which Aaron was obviously presenting as proof of his story, it's just you emailing yourself. So these kidnappers must have been very clever to get two email addresses and email back and forth between your two email addresses. He was being sarcastic. These things happen really quickly. Somebody's not going to break in and use all this time to get all this information. This is like a movie script. There's too much detail. You're overcompensating for the fact you're trying to make it so elaborate that we think it must be true, but you've made it so elaborate, it's done the exact opposite. We're thinking you've been watching way too many movies, Aaron. He also told him that the public would know what he'd done, that he had killed Denise, and that people would treat him and think he was like Scott Peterson. Now, Scott Peterson, if you are a true crime addict like myself, you will know immediately who that is. He killed his wife, Lacey Peterson, and pretended that she had been kidnapped. Aaron was told that that is what his reputation was going to be, and that's what everyone was going to think.
Watch the Lacey Peterson, Scott, whatever the hell his name was. Did you watch that story in the public out of that stuff? You look at that and you go, that dude's a lying son of a bitch. That's the way people look at you. Frogman obviously didn't do it, so who did it now? Well, it's the guy that I've been sitting here talking to tonight. So now I get out my puzzle pieces and I start figuring out, okay, how do I make it so you look like a monster?
And this is when watching the actual, I encourage you to seek out the recordings of the interviews with Detective Mustard and Aaron. It's infuriating. Where Detective Mustard actually says to Aaron and uses the word, so how do I make, I'm going to read what he says, so how do I make it so you seem like a monster? I mean, really? Aaron's family arrive at the police station to be questioned. They speak for Aaron's character. They said he would never hurt Denise. He's not a violent person. He's not an aggressive person. He's not an angry person. He has not done this. But the police made it very clear to Aaron's family that they didn't have any other suspects and they felt that he was responsible for whatever had befallen Denise. Detective Mustard, again, wandering in with his size whatevers, said, I'm not looking for a live Denise. I'm looking for a dead Denise.
I'm looking for the truth. I'm not looking for a live Denise. I'm looking for dead Denise.
So this guy has already decided Aaron's done something. He's killed Denise. She's somewhere and he's going to get to the bottom of it. In Aaron's mind, he's thinking, my girlfriend's been kidnapped and you're not looking into it. You're just trying to pin everything on me. I haven't done anything. So the police then made Aaron take a polygraph.
Submitted to a polygraph,
today,
which an FBI agent told him he failed.
They're not seen to be entirely accurate. You can fool them both ways. You can fail a polygraph when you're telling the truth. I so would. Because if you're of a nervous disposition, if you get nervous when you're being questioned, even if you're telling the truth, that can come across as deception. On the other hand, if you're one of these psychotic, psychopathic people, you can fool yourself into the fact you're telling the truth, and you can answer these questions with such a calm demeanour and slowed heart rate that you will come out like you're telling the truth. So anyway, Aaron has this polygraph and he fails, and he is told, there's no question in my mind that you failed this test, and you failed it miserably. It's not even close.
I don't know where she is.
I don't know where she is. I want you guys to find her.
All right, Aaron, there's no question in my mind that you failed this test. And you failed it miserably. It's not even close.
I did not do anything.
Okay.
I did.
I'm pretty sure maybe you did. Maybe you didn't do anything. Maybe something happened to her that you didn't plan. I don't know. You tell me. But it can't start with 3 guys showing up at the house taking her away. That's not what happened. You know where she is.
I don't know where she is.
So poor Aaron's sitting there not knowing what to do with himself, thinking, I'm going down for murder. I don't know where my girlfriend is. I don't know what's happening. Meanwhile, us as the viewer, and definitely me as the listener to that original 911 call, Aaron has definitely covering something. He's done something here. We're going to find out as the story progresses. So Aaron, despite feeling that lie detector, still sticks to his story. At this stage, the police decide to get in his brother, that FBI agent we spoke about called Ethan, thinking that if anyone can get Aaron to admit to the truth, it's his brother. His brother comes in, speaks to him. Aaron gives him exactly the same story. I'm not lying. This has happened. At this stage, Ethan gets Aaron a lawyer because he hasn't had a lawyer at this stage. At this stage, it's Tuesday, the 24th of March. Aaron has been questioned on and off for 18 hours. He slept in the interrogation room the night before. He's in no good state whatsoever. And his lawyer, Dan Russo, arrives that next day. So the lawyer asks the police, have you actually charged my client with anything? Has he been detained? And they said no. So a lot of people don't realise you don't have to stay at the police station unless you're charged, unless the police have a holding order, or unless you're under arrest. So Dan the lawyer texts Aaron from the station and to his office. It's at this stage that Aaron finds out that pretty much the entire public know this story, and also inexplicably everyone knows that he did not make that phone call until multiple hours after the supposed event. So obviously everyone and sundry is thinking exactly what I thought when I heard that initial phone call. This guy is fishy, he is not telling the truth. So while all this is going on, the police are out searching for Denise, and the way the searches are being conducted, where they're searching, and the fact that they have cadaver dogs makes it very clear to anyone looking on, all of the public, that they think that Denise is dead, and everyone thinks that Aaron is responsible for that. But on that Tuesday, the 24th of March, the San Francisco Chronicle newspaper receives an email from the kidnappers, and it reads, Miss Huskins will be returned safely tomorrow. We will send a link to her location after she has been dropped off. She will be in good health and safe while she waits. Any advance on us or our associates will create a dangerous situation for Denise. Wait until she is recovered and then proceed how you will. We will be ready. Now, at the bottom of that email, there was a link, and that link had an audio file with Denise's voice saying that she had been kidnapped, that she was safe, that she was well, and they also had her read out some local news that had happened. There had been a plane crash earlier that day, and they made her talk about that to show proof of life that she was actually alive at that time.
Okay, my name is Denise Huskins. I'm kidnapped, otherwise fine. My first concert with Bethany and her mom, to Blink-182, Bad Religion. Earlier today, there was a plane crash in the Alps. 150 people died.
Au contraire, what are the police going to say? Are the police going to backtrack? Aaron has not killed Denise. Denise is obviously alive and well. What's going to be the next step? Well, Mr. Mustard, step in again with your size whatevers. He says someone's obviously still very clearly lying. He said if it's not Aaron, it's Denise, and suggested that Denise had faked her own kidnapping. He asked Denise's parents, now this is going to make you fume, if anything traumatic had ever happened to Denise as a child, and they confirmed that as a child she had been abused at a camp. And I have to read this to you because it's ridiculous. He suggested that sometimes when a woman goes through things like this, they will fake that it happened again as adults to get attention, suggesting she faked her own kidnapping to get attention and as revenge for the texts that she found on her boyfriend's phone. Oh dear God. So some of you that are big movie fans may be watching this and may be thinking, this sounds just like Gone Girl, and you would be right. If you're not aware, Gone Girl is a movie that was released the year before all this happened, where this girl is kidnapped at the beginning of the movie. Her boyfriend is blamed, or her husband is blamed on her murder. They can never find her. and she has done this for revenge on him cheating on her. And at the end of the movie, big spoilers, she turns back up. So she's actually also played by, I think I've maybe written it later down, I can't remember the name of the actress that plays her, but she does look strikingly like Denise Huskins. So they are insinuating that Denise has done a real life Gone Girl. This case became known as the Gone Girl case. Denise has faked her own kidnapping as revenge for those emails, for those texts, for Aaron texting his ex-girlfriend Andrea. And this is what has happened, because absolutely definitely what you're telling me did not happen. If Aaron's not lying, then Denise is. Coincidentally, Aaron never got any apology for the accusations, for saying he was like Scott Peterson, for saying that everyone thought he'd killed his partner. The statement he made that Matt Mustard made about girls faking things that had happened as a child, they faked later as adults to get attention, he has always denied saying that. So we have Aaron has lied initially and he has murdered Denise. Now Denise has faked her own kidnapping because she's lying, and now guys, Denise, who is missing, her parents have faked a statement that he made to them. So the whole world around this guy are liars. Just something's not right here. So 2 days pass and the unthinkable happens. The Vallejo PD get a call from Denise's father saying that his neighbour had just contacted him. He lives in somewhere called Huntington Beach, which is about 400 miles away from Vallejo. Saying that Denise was there. Denise was knocking on her dad's door. Obviously no answer because her dad's up in Vallejo trying to work with the police to work out where his daughter is. The neighbour had taken her in and she was alive and well, and she was stood there in front of her. Police obviously straight down to Huntington Beach, pick up Denise and interview her immediately, and she gives exactly the same recount as Aaron, almost word perfect. She also confirms that the intruders mistook her for Andrea, but they took her anyway, and they held her for 48 hours in a little room. The room that she was in, she was actually secured, she was tied to a bed, and the windows in the room were all boarded up, were blacked out so that she couldn't see anything. She said that she had actually been treated relatively well while she'd been there. The kidnappers had been polite. They had taken the quilt from the house to keep her warm in the boot of the car while they transported her. She had actually been swapped from one car to another en route, and that she felt she must have been kept somewhere quite isolated in a large house, as there was absolutely no noise. She couldn't hear traffic, she couldn't hear people coming and going. Then that the kidnappers had said that they were going to release her in Utica Avenue, which is the same street that she grew up on as a child, and they were going to release her near there, somewhere that she knew, due to the severity of the experience that she'd had. The kidnappers were trying to make out, we're not bad people, we've just done this for money, we don't want to put you through any more than we have to, we're going to drop you off with all your stuff near your mum and dad's place. The mum and dad lived separately, but they both lived in a similar area. She said at no stage did she see the intruders' faces because she had to put those same goggles on when anyone entered the room. So obviously Denise is again being questioned. Now her cousin Nick has very recently qualified as a lawyer, and he speaks to the police on Denise's behalf, and he is told by the police that if Denise admits that this was all a ruse and she's made it all up, that she will get immunity. But also they're talking to Aaron, and if he does the same thing, if he admits everything, he will get immunity, but they both can't have immunity. So it's like trying to pit them against each other as to who's going to tell first. Will Aaron lie? Does Aaron actually think that Denise has done this? Does Aaron think his girlfriend has faked her own kidnapping to get revenge on him? Will he sort of corroborate that to get out of whatever trouble he thinks he's in? Obviously, logically, he should think, well, I'm not in any trouble. They know she's alive. They know I haven't killed her. But he's in a situation. He's been questioned for so many hours. He's been in a complete bits that his girlfriend's missing. He doesn't know what's happened. His head's all over the place. So that's what they're doing. The police are pitting the two of them against each other. Whichever one of you comes clean first, you will get immunity. So with Denise now out of her kidnapping, she sees what's been all over the media. She sees that Aaron has been blamed for her murder. She sees that the world thinks that she is Gone Girl, that she has faked her own kidnapping. She is devastated. Her cousin Nick gets her a professional, a really well-experienced lawyer. He is just qualified. It's beyond his pay grade. Doug Rappaport is her new lawyer. The police want to actually fly Denise on one of their aircraft back to Vallejo, but her lawyer says, no, absolutely not. You're going to get a commercial flight. I'm going to buy you a ticket. You're not going to be on that flight with those FBI agents. He just doesn't want her being treated like a criminal. He wants to talk to her face to face before she's interviewed about what's happened. So Denise gets on this commercial flight with the ticket that her lawyer has bought for her. This is communicated by the police to the media that they don't know where Denise is, that she is no longer being cooperative with the police, and a whole pile of hoo-ha. I'm sure they knew exactly where she was. They could have checked the plane logs and records of the passenger lists. This was just another notch on the bedpost for them to say, she's not talking to us anymore. More proof for them to say something untoward's going on here. Someone from the Vallejo Police Department comes forward and gives a statement to the media, which reads as follows. If you can imagine devoting all of our resources 24 hours a day on what I would classify as a wild goose chase, it's a tremendous loss, it's disappointing, it's disheartening, and the fact that we've essentially wasted all of these resources for really nothing is upsetting.
And from this point forward, I will not refer to them as a victim or a witness. The statement that Mr. Quinn provided was such an incredible story, we initially had a hard time believing it, and upon further investigation, we were not able to substantiate any of the things that it was saying. That is a tremendous amount of resources that, in my opinion, was wasted. But I can tell you, in the grand scheme of things, Mr. Quinn and Ms. Huskins has plundered valuable resources away from our community and has taken the focus away from the true victims of our community. It is Mr. Quinn and Ms. Huskins that owes this community an apology. At the conclusion of the investigation, if you feel that there is sufficient evidence to move forward, we will be requesting criminal charges either for the state or the federal level.
I can't even imagine how Denise was feeling at this stage. As we're watching along with American Nightmare, it's like, oh my God, did this happen? Is this all a lie? Is she gone, girl? What's going on? It's twisting and turning. You don't know what to think. All my knowledge about this case was I had heard that 911 call considerably long before any of this happened, and I thought there was something a bit dodgy with how Aaron had reported what had happened. So the lady that was in Gone Girl is called Rosamund Pike. I've just read it in my notes. So the police were suggesting it was a Gone Girl case. They said all of Denise's claims were completely unsubstantiated. It was an orchestrated event by her and not a kidnapping. They said she even looks like Rosamund Pike, who stars in the movie. Her and her family continued to be hounded by the media. She was being dubbed Gone Girl. The police even actually told Denise's family that they needed to watch Gone Girl so they would know what their daughter Denise had done, because the similarities were uncanny. Now, the next little bit I'm going to talk about contains some stuff that happened to Denise while she was kidnapped. It's a bit distressing, so it does mention assault, so I just wanted to make you aware before I talk about it. If that's not something that you want to, well, obviously nobody wants to hear it, but if it's something you'd rather not listen to, I just wanted to make you aware. So Denise is obviously further interviewed by her lawyer. She goes into more detail about what happened. She tells him that she was tied to the bed, that the windows were boarded up, that any time the intruders came into the room, she had to put the goggles on. She also said they had a discussion about the fact they had no dirt on her like they did with Andrea, because they thought they were kidnapping Andrea. And they told her that the only way around this was for them to film on camera one of them having sex with her, so that they could use this as blackmail to her, that if she ever came forward, this video would be released on social media, on the internet. She begged them not to go ahead. She told her kidnappers that she had been abused as a child, what she had went through, hoping that, because these guys were trying to make out they were nice guys, they were just in it for the money, that they didn't want to hurt her, that, you know, they weren't going to do anything to damage her. She sort of appealed to them, but it didn't work. The attack went ahead, it was filmed, and after this happened, the kidnapper came back, as one specific one said, I'll do it. came back into the room later that evening, said that he'd watched the tape and he didn't feel what he saw on the tape was believable, so unfortunately he didn't want to, but they would have to do it again. And this time, now this woman has just been through this experience. She's been kidnapped. She's told, you have to make it look more believable, you must be affectionate, and said that she must kiss him. I can't even begin to imagine what that woman went through. It's just... she was also made shower after the first time and again after the second time. Obviously, they wanted to remove as much DNA evidence as was possible. The guy that did this to her told her that he used to be in the Marines. It's something he probably shouldn't have said, and he said to her not to tell anyone that he had mentioned it. I think he thought he was impressing her somehow. I was a Marine, yeah, I'll completely forget what you've just done to me. And he told her he really admired her strength and her resilience, and he wished they'd met under different circumstances. This guy's fooled himself into thinking that perhaps they could have had a relationship, which is just staggering. So if you thought you were angry at the police to this point, be prepared to be more angry. When Denise spoke to her lawyer about what had happened, he contacted the police and he said, we need to have a kit done. A kit of that R word that we can't say on YouTube, to see if we've any DNA evidence from these assaults. The police said, we will meet with Denise tomorrow as already planned. We will interview her and we will decide whether or not one of these kits is done. The police did not allow it to go ahead for her to have the kit done. The lawyer said, well, valuable evidence is being lost all the time. You know, you may do it tomorrow when there's no evidence left. The police said, just tell her not to shower and to stay in those same clothes. So this woman that has been put through absolute hell, that has lived through this degradation and this assault, is told, you can't shower, and anybody that knows anything about assaults will know it's one of the things that the person wants to do immediately. You can't shower and you can't change your clothes. We will decide whether or not you have that kit done. And that's what Denise was told. So the next day, Denise is questioned by the police. The entire interview is very much put across as she is the perpetrator. She is asked to go over what happened over and over again. They keep trying to trip her up with small details. They make her discuss the assault in detail multiple times. They ask her what position she was in. They ask her how the person's body felt against hers. Questions that really nobody has got any right to be asking anyone. After the interview that she has with the police, for the first time, she reunites with Aaron. Now, Aaron obviously hasn't seen Denise. He has had the police in his ear saying she's done this. And initially, Aaron did wonder if Denise had done this and it was a revenge situation. But when he met up with her and when they spoke together, he believed her immediately. He knew she'd been through a very traumatic ordeal, and the two of them just stuck together from that point onwards. Okay, so for the next bit, I'm going to refer to my pages. Apologies for the unprofessionalism, but there's a lot of information I want to get across to you. So the next day, that San Francisco Chronicle, that newspaper that originally received that email with the audio file on there, received a 15-page manifesto from the kidnappers. So they were really annoyed that Denise hadn't been believed and what they'd seen over the media. Now, whether that's because they wanted to be infamous and they wanted the media to be talking about them, or whether it is what they said it was, that this woman's been through enough and look what you're doing to her, I'm not sure, but that's what they tried to say. They said they wanted their crime to be acknowledged. They sent photos of the room that Denise was kept in, which she had described to the police. They said they were, and I quote, very highly skilled, college-educated individuals and Ocean's 11 gentlemen criminals. I don't remember that scene in Ocean's 11, I don't know about you. They said they'd been conducting petty crimes in preparation for this event, and it was just for practice. This one was for practice for a much bigger one they wanted to do down the line. It was essentially a training exercise. They wanted to be able to retire on what they did next. But they felt bad about kidnapping the wrong person, which is why they took her to Huntington Beach, where she grew up. They tried to make out that they were decent people. They didn't want to hurt anyone. They felt deep remorse for everything that they'd done. They were re-evaluating their lives following this experience. They also confirmed the woman that was the initial target was Andrea and not Denise. They said they didn't have the courage to turn themselves in, but didn't want to see the lives of decent people being ruined, like they haven't done that already. They thought that the fact that Denise's name was Mud and no one believed her, they thought that, well, obviously that is going to ruin her life, but what about what they did, you know? They asked for a message to actually be passed to Denise because they didn't know how to reach her. And I quote, "We are unspeakably sorry and ashamed for what happened, including the matter resulting from an argument within the team. Tell her that all the threats against her and her family are lifted and she is safe. Tell her we will come forward and try our best to correct the situation." So Denise Huskins' lawyer actually came forward to the police with this email, this 15-page letter. He didn't say where he'd got it, but obviously it had also been sent to the San Francisco Chronicle, so it had probably been sent multiple places. And the kidnappers actually sent a following letter after that, where they said that this was on Saturday the 28th of March. They said they were ashamed and regretful, but they pointed fingers at the police for not believing Aaron and Denise and treating them like criminals, and said they were disgusted at the police's treatment of them. They also emailed the police directly in another message and asked them why nothing had been done about the victimization towards Aaron and Denise. They gave them 24 hours to issue a full and unequivocal apology, public, to Denise and Aaron, which had to include the words "we were wrong," with zero insinuation that the victims were at fault at all. They said they could have ended up as prolific and dangerous criminals, but they have now disbanded due to what had happened, and they had Denise to thank for that, so asked the police to stop persecuting her. Even after this, the police did not believe these people existed. They still did not take these messages seriously, and Denise and Aaron were still number one suspects in the whole scenario. They'd made it all up. Aaron's job actually wanted to fire him because of the attention it was bringing to the company. These guys were going through complete hell. The entire world thought that they were criminals. They thought that Denise had done all this for attention, after initially everyone thinking Aaron was a murderer. As if what they'd went through was not enough, they were having to contend with all of this. So I'm going to read most of what I've written. I've got like 10 pages here, guys. I'm struggling to remember, so please forgive me for looking down and up. So June 2015. So all of this kicked off in March. So in June 2015, something unexpected happened. Dublin Police Department in Dublin, California, which is about an hour away from Vallejo, received a telephone call from a woman hiding in her bathroom to say that intruders had broken into her home. They had ordered her and her husband to lie on their front on the bed. They had put zip ties and asked her to tie her husband up. But in the course of this happening, her husband had actually managed to jump up and attack one of the intruders. And with this sort of like distraction, the woman had managed to run away and hide in the bathroom. I think the intruder had then hit her husband over the head with a really heavy torch and had knocked him out.
County emergency.
We had a break-in. They are out there right now. My husband's fighting with them. I just broke loose. I will hide in the bathroom right now.
He's run away already.
He ran away. Okay, my husband is bleeding.
So police arrived and they found a mobile phone that had fallen from... The intruders had left it. Whether it had fallen from their pocket, I don't know. But they found a phone and they managed to trace it to a woman in Orangevale, California. They went to see her and she said, "Oh yes, this belongs to my son Matthew Mueller. He lost it yesterday." And obviously that she didn't know the context of why they were asking who this phone belonged to. She thought the police had found a phone that like the police are going to show up on your doorstep. "Is this your phone?" And she said where he was. He was at like a family lake house that they had for holidays. So they spoke a bit more to the mother and they discovered that Matthew had been a Marine for 5 years. He was honourably discharged, having reached the rank of sergeant. He graduated with distinguished honours in law and then immigration law. He was married but now divorced, and he had been disbarred in California for keeping a client's money for them. It was only $1,200, but worth mentioning. He had obviously like graduated, all that stuff. So everything that he had said to Denise and in those letters matched. So the police went to this lake house and they kicked the door in, and wandering out of a room, there was Matthew. The house was a complete mess. He said he knew why they were there. In the search, the police found ski masks, stun guns, laptops and mobiles, including a laptop hidden under a mattress, and there was a stolen car outside. There was a blow-up doll with wires attached to it to make it like stand up like a person, so that if, you know, like in Home Alone with that, you know, like that. In the car, they found duct tape, zip ties, water pistols, which had laser targets, and swim goggles with the eyes blacked out. One of the pairs of the swim goggles had a blonde hair stuck to it. No one in this investigation had blonde hair. Enter Misty. She's a detective. Thank the Lord for Misty. She really zoned in on this blonde hair and she was feeling really uneasy. And obviously, as a good police officer, she thought this has obviously happened before to someone else that's got blonde hair. She thought there's more going on. Now, no one else looked into this. No one else, but she was very suspicious of this, and she started looking into this. So, on investigation and a separate note of Matthew Muller, it seemed that he was involved and linked to multiple crimes. In 2009, a woman's house was broken into. She was drugged. They asked for all of her financial information, date of birth, mother's maiden name, her computer, social security details. They put blacked out goggles on her, sedated her, and threatened to assault her if she didn't comply. Sound familiar? A few weeks later, identical crime took place. There was a struggle and the man ran off. He left behind a key, the kind of key that can open most simple residential locks. While investigating the crime, the police found that 4 days before, a suspicious man had been seen exiting one apartment and entering another one. That was Matthew Muller. After questioning, he lawyered up and he disappeared shortly after, leaving a note for his wife saying, "I'm not coming back." He said his mental health was in a terrible situation, told her not to try to find him or to contact him. So this is obviously going back a few years before this event. He called her a few days later and she went and picked him up. That stupid woman, why did you not question what was going on, what he'd done? She went and she picked him up. The police at that stage, given what had happened, didn't have enough to charge him. So Detective Misty, going back to her, still isn't happy with what's happened with this blonde hair. She looked into other crimes that had a similar nature in the recent area and she found the crime in Vallejo with Denise. The police, when she called them, the Vallejo Police Department, kept avoiding her calls. They wouldn't call her back. They wouldn't answer the phone call. They wouldn't call her back. But eventually, she was like a dog with a bone. Someone called her back. And eventually, she spoke to someone who just said, "No, you need to call the FBI." So she called the FBI and they blamed the Vallejo Police Department. These guys are not interested in the truth. They're not interested in what happened to Denise. They don't want to admit culpability. But this woman, oh, I love her, Misty. So she spoke to the FBI about what she'd found, about Matthew Muller, about the evidence, about his history. She included stuff that had also been found in a storage unit that he had in Vallejo, so there was a tie to Vallejo. They looked at the sat-nav GPS in the car, the stolen car that was found outside that home that day the police broke in, and they found on the sat-nav that the car had Utica Avenue, Huntington Beach typed in. That's where Denise had been dropped off. They found Aaron's laptop, which had been the one hidden underneath the mattress. They found audio files on computers, including the one that was played through their headphones, including the one that Denise had recorded. They found the videos taken of Denise's assault. They also had CCTV footage from a local store of Matthew buying the burner phone that was used to communicate with Aaron. Something about that we will get to right at the end, which is just shocking. They also found out that Matthew had been watching people prior. They found drones that he had been spying on people with, and these were all found on his property. Apologies guys, I just had to go and put my shopping away. The delivery arrived an hour early, so if I'm in a slightly different position or looking a bit frazzled, that's why. So we haven't got much left to finish on this one, so we left it with the drones had been found at Matthew's place. It was discovered that he suffers from bipolar disorder and high-achieving organised to extreme psychosis, but wouldn't take his medication, which is when all these problems started. A press conference was actually held by Denise's lawyer, not by the police department, not by the FBI, saying that the man was in custody, that it wasn't a hoax, that Denise and Aaron had no culpability whatsoever and they were victims of this crime.
Big break in that case that appeared to be a real-life Gone Girl. When a California woman was abducted from her home, her boyfriend tied up and drugged. Police accused them of faking the kidnapping, but now another man is behind bars, and authorities say it was not a hoax.
Today is a fabulous day for Denise Huskins, for Aaron Quinn. They are absolutely 100% not just not guilty, but innocent.
Aaron and Denise obviously sued the city for what had happened, and they settled on $2.5 million. And hopefully that goes some way to actually pave out a future for them. It's obviously nowhere near enough for what they went through. Detective Mustard, you ask? He never received any punishment for his role in this. He didn't apologise, and, are you ready for this, guys? He got an Officer of the Year award in 2015, which was the same year that this happened to Denise and Aaron. Okay, so sentencing, guys. Matthew pled guilty on March 16th, 2017, so that's 2 years after the event, and he was sentenced to 40 years in prison for kidnapping. He said that he did not assault Denise. He denied this. At a later date, this is quite ironic, while he was serving time in prison for the kidnapping, he was actually assaulted himself. He said that he now had PTSD following that. He couldn't come to terms with what had happened. He was really struggling with it. And when asked what he would say to Denise, who said that he had assaulted her and that she was suffering from PTSD, he said, "Oh, this is a pending legal matter and I'm not allowed to discuss it." So he was very po-faced about the whole thing. He couldn't speak to the facts of what had happened, but anyone who said that had happened, that it was a horrible thing.
Now, how would you speak to Denise's feelings that she's been horrifically traumatized by you? She says, I know you've been traumatized. How about her trauma, as she describes it?
Well, again, I'm really sorry, sir. I'm gonna have to defer until trial. You know, I will certainly be taking the stand in my own defense, and we'll talk about what did or did not happen. But it's something that does have to be saved for a later date. Sorry.
That's okay. What would you say? Is there anything you want to say directly to Denise or Aaron? Not necessarily about their wedding, but about what they say they experienced. Anything, any regrets? Anything you would say to them?
I don't think I have. I think that if there's going to be conversation, they should initiate it. That's their right at this point, so I wouldn't presume to say anything to them at this point.
Let me ask you about Vallejo Police. Why was it important for you to defend Denise, send me material over email? Why did that get you concerned that they were not believing what she said?
I can't reply to that without confirming that I'm the person that sent those emails. I will tell you I'm certainly outraged, as everybody should be, by the conduct of the police, or at least insofar as they decided at such an early phase in the investigation to turn it back to the victims and call it a hoax. That was probably not the best policing. I don't know all of the motivations behind it, so I won't presume to say that, but it was obviously a very, very damaging move. I wish it not happened.
Did you send me the so-called, what people are calling the proof of life audio of Denise, and why did you send that?
I, again, can't speak to the facts, sir.
He also said he would be representing himself in the trial, but then his claim was not guilty by way of insanity, but he was deemed competent enough to represent himself in court. He would later claim that he had another relapse in his mental health and he pled guilty. He eventually decided he would admit that he had done this. He was sentenced to 31 years for this, but that was to run concurrently with the 40 years that he had already been sentenced to. He always has insisted to this day that he worked alone, even though Denise and Aaron said that there were multiple people. They saw legs, they heard voices, they heard whispering. They've both said there were more than one person. But Matthew has never given up his accomplices, and they've never been found. Aaron and Denise have struggled together. They've both said they're the shell of the people that they previously were. They've had therapy and went on to actually get married, and they actually now have 2 children together, which is beautiful news. Denise's lawyer actually officiated the wedding, and Detective Misty, that wonderful Detective Misty, she was there at the wedding. Denise and Aaron credit Misty with their story finally being believed. If it hadn't been for the dogged work of that police detective, I know we're talking a lot about how bad the Vallejo Police Department were here, or obviously our Detective Matthew Mustard. This detective, hats off to her. If it hadn't been for her thinking there's something fishy here, there's something not right, someone else has been through this crime, I'm going to look into this. God knows what would have happened. Oddly, their first daughter, Olivia, was actually born on the anniversary that the kidnappers dropped Denise off outside where her dad lived. Let me end it with this, guys. What was discovered after the event. It was later discovered that the police had Aaron's cell phone in their custody. Aaron never fiddled with settings. He wasn't the sort of person that did that, but it was found that while in their custody, the police department had switched Aaron's phone onto airplane mode, meaning that those messages that were coming from the kidnapper, that the kidnapper said that they would be sending, that Denise's life depended on, never came through to Aaron's phone. When that phone was given back to him and when he switched it back on, all of those messages all came through, loads and loads of messages, obviously bringing everything back after the event. But the police had switched that off because they didn't believe him. They were completely convinced that Denise was dead, and in doing that, Denise's life could have been very well at risk. And obviously Aaron could have been vindicated right from the start. And that, guys, is the story of American Nightmare. I will leave you with one little piece of information right at the end that you're probably saying, but you didn't talk about that blonde hair. That blonde hair, guys, was tested and it belonged to Denise Huskins. All praise Detective Misty. And that, guys, is the story of American Nightmare, which is a fabulous documentary streaming on Netflix right now if you want to see it. There is substantial police interview footage available on YouTube if you want to look for it. I've put little bits in here and there, but there is considerably more online if you are interested in it. This is a story that completely intrigued me from the start, because when I heard that initial 911 call years and years ago, I thought there was something a bit sus myself. And obviously in retrospect I was completely wrong. It just goes to show how quickly things can snowball out of control. And it makes you wonder how many innocent people are actually serving time in prison for things that they did not do. The mind boggles, guys, but American Nightmare is a must-watch if you're interested in this kind of thing. If you stuck with me to the end, thank you so much for watching. I hope to do more of these in the future. Also, if you are interested in true crime, many moons ago I did a video about the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case. She has recently been released from prison. I won't say what she done. If you don't know the story, I would really recommend you check that video out. There is a serialization on that, documentaries on that, and a really fantastic show starring Patricia Arquette as Gypsy's mother. I will link the title below. My memory is shocking. I will link my video at the end if you want to check it out. If you do like true crime, if you're interested in true things that happened that were put into stories, TV shows, movies, please subscribe. Do me a huge personal favour. About 10% of people that watch my true crime videos are subscribed, the rest are not, so it would be a massive personal favour if you would subscribe to the channel. I will have more content like this coming in future. I do want to cover various things. The movie that was obviously based on the very famous Orphan. We have documentaries about that at the moment, which is very, very interesting, which I would like to discuss. But for now, guys, thank you so much for watching.